Welcome, everybody, to the Beers and Bible Podcast. A podcast where we talk Bible, and we do have beards. Smaller ones than we had when we first began this podcast 6 years ago, but they're there.
Yeah.
Just have to have faith.
Why is it in 6 years our beards have shrank?
Shrunken? I think you had a big beard 6 years ago.
Yeah.
But I wonder, and this is my theory, we weren't really as into running 6 years ago as we are now. So do you think that the aerodynamics of running led to you needing to trim your beard back?
I don't know. For me, it's like my beard is so gray now that when it grows long, I look like an old man.
I think that's exactly. See, mine's pretty short right now, but like I look like Kenny Rogers or Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Late 80s Kenny Rogers.
I just look like that guy you don't want to stumble across, like on the Appalachian Trail. Just, the one that just follows. He just turns around and follows you for 20 miles and waits for you to bed down for the night.
Hey, it's a cold night tonight.
So you look like Kenny Rogers. I look like a serial killer on the Appalachian Trail. And
there you go.
Grow out.
There you go. Yeah. Nobody's going to want to listen to podcasts hosted by late 80s Kenny Rogers and Appalachian Trail serial killer. So,
well, maybe that's the case. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, anyway. We're really giving ourselves a lot of good qualifiers here for this topic, and
I think so. Yeah, this is building trust and rapport.
Yes,
especially the first-time listeners. Yeah,
people will now listen to this episode and say, "I think I trust whatever they said about our nation wholeheartedly."
Trusted news source. Yeah. So our topic today, I guess we can just jump right in. I texted you about this topic because obviously anybody who's been paying attention, things right now are just absolutely crazy. There's a lot of unrest in Minneapolis, Minnesota. 2 shootings by ICE, and depending on which side of the aisle you fall on, left or right, people have formed very, 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 very strong opinions about those incidents. And people very close to me have seen it quite differently than me. And I've had some pretty painful conversations in the recent days. I can't elaborate too much, but what I mean by that is conclusions have been drawn about me because of an incident that I wasn't involved in. And even if I didn't comment on it, there was conclusions formed about me and my values based on that one incident. And it was a very interesting phenomena. And I was just thinking about it and praying about it. And I thought about something my buddy David Young said. We've had him on the podcast before. I was at lunch with David Young a couple of years ago, and he looked at me and he said, I think there are 2 different visions that we have in our nation for America. 2 different visions for who we are and who we are supposed to be, and those are irreconcilable, and that's why we have so much division. I started thinking about it, and that's why I reached out to you and said, man, I want to talk about this idea of 2 Americas. And we're divided. I mean, do you see any of those tensions, and have you had situations like that where people close to you see things quite differently than you do, and it's led to maybe some painful conversations and
tensions? Yeah, I definitely have. Numerous times I've experienced that with friends and family, and it's like you're living 2 different realities based on where you get your information, where you get your news, who helps you formulate those opinions. It could be radically different. Just a quick example would be I see Candace Owens as she's got a big podcast. I see her as like card carrying, absolutely do anything for clicks crazy. And
absolutely.
I have a family member who is like, she's onto something. Give her time, trust the process. She's just asking questions. And I'm like, meanwhile, she's like just slandering so many people and speculating about so many people with no evidence. And and just making herself look absolutely crazy to the average person. And we're living in two different realities. We can't even talk about that.
Right.
And what the ideas that she's espousing, because I believe she's out there. This other person is like, no, 100%. I'm falling. I got where she's going with this, and we just have to trust the process. So it's like, how does that come about? You know, like how do we live in these two different realities of this person? And that's kind of what we're going to unpack today. But yeah, that's just a microcosmic view of the nation as a whole right now.
Sure.
And the two realities that we're living in.
Yeah. So one of the things that I asked you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, is, you know, America is divided. Everybody's saying that. Everybody is saying, man, we're more divided now than we've ever been. I had a family member that, you know, in their exchange with me again about, you know, things they thought I believed, even though they didn't ask me. They just assumed that I did. They said something like, we're headed towards a civil war because we're so divided. And I was pleading with them, like, oh no, we're not. Like, we don't have to be like this. First of all, I'm not really sure that we disagree about this as much as you think we do. But secondly, like, if we're divided, why is that? And is there any way we could like name it and maybe turn this ship around and figure out how we can find common ground, right? Because it seems like we're willing to say we're divided, but we're not willing to say, what does it take to become undivided, number one, and then why are we so divided, number two?
Yeah.
But just curious, I told you, hey, like, let's look at 3 reasons why we think we're so divided right now. So curious to know, Gabe, what are your 3 reasons for why you think America's so divided right now?
One reason would be the 24-hour corporate news cycle and the various options every American has to participate in that 24-hour corporate news cycle. So what I mean by that is, like, you have really, since the late 90s, you've had corporate entities like Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, the list goes on. And those stations are on for 24 hours, and they're funded by corporate entities and those various news channels and stations promote bias on particular events and situations going on in our nation or globally. So if you tend to watch one or the other, you're going to only get that stance fed to you. So it appeals to people based on their already preconceived biases. And so what you experience through that is confirmation bias. And then you have the further polarization of the American public through those news channels.
Yeah, I said the same thing. So that's your number one reason. That's my number one reason. I think not only our constant exposure to the news cycle, we have unending access to social media partisan content. And some of it's true and some of it's untrue, right? And so social media is powered by an algorithm to feed you content based on what it thinks it wants you to see. So if you have existing beliefs, or you have negative views of the opposition, it's going to continue to foster those and reinforce your negative beliefs, because it's just feeding you what it is you already believe and what it is you already think. And so it pushes you further and further and further into your own ideas and into your own echo chamber. And so if you are a radical right-wing, conspiracy theorist that's podcasting Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens all the time, guess what? You're probably going to be fed by the algorithm. Or if you are a radical left-winger who, you're going to be fed by the algorithm and so you're going to feel like the whole world agrees with you, and people who don't are crazy. But it's just because you've got a curated news experience. So yeah, that's my number one. So
yeah, that was my number 2. Algorithmically,
excuse me,
bless you. algorithmically amplified confirmation bias as manifested on social media and AI platforms. And I would add to your point, now commonly employed and utilized by political or even global adversaries. So we see now like the war being waged on the American people from a variety of players doesn't have to be done through aircraft carriers and invasions and bullets. It can be done through the slow creep and persuasion of using tools like AI and social media, bots. So you can, train the algorithm to pump information and ideas to people just based on sheer number of people commenting on something and what you think they would spend their time reading. So that was my number 2 was algorithms.
Yeah. Wow. I don't think we are as aware of how that is shaping us as we think we are.
Yeah.
That sentence didn't make sense. I don't think we are aware of that as we think we are. If we're not aware of it, then we wouldn't think we are. I just don't think we're aware of that. I think when we post things on Facebook or Reddit or whatever, we think that we're being free thinkers. And the truth is, when we repost it or whatever, it was fed to us by an algorithm. We didn't come up with it. We didn't write it. We didn't, we had a AI software basically feed us that, and we said, Trump said it again, and we reposted it, or look what she's doing again, or whatever, right? And I think that is an unprecedented technological factor in our division that we have to figure out, because it's not doing good things at all. It's taking us some pretty dark places. So that was your number 2, the algorithm stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's my number 2. Because my number 1 was news cycle and social media, implying social media has algorithmic type factors. My number 2 is reckless language and rhetoric by politicians. So that's my dog, by the way. He's yelling at me right now because he wants me to play with him. And he's a huge Trump fan. No,
triggered.
He's triggered. Yeah, this is not going to be popular for some Trump supporters, but I will just say it. I think Donald Trump has said some very extreme, unhinged, and reckless things that have not made our country better. He has called his political opponents vermin. He's called illegal immigrants animals and monsters. And there's a way to get your point across without using inflammatory language.
Yeah.
And I don't think we understand. We're all about applauding and high-fiving our guy or our gal when they say something we agree with. And, get him. You got to use strong language. Here's what you understand. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if your guy or your gal says something that is inflammatory, reckless, and careless, there will be a reaction to it by the other side, to the point where it will get amped up, and the pendulum will swing further to the left than ever before and further to the right than ever before. And it'll keep swinging and swinging and swinging until the fringe of whatever party you're talking about acts on the language that it's being given. So case in point, Donald Trump has said all these things for years. And so I'm just going to read. I have Tim Walz, Minnesota governor, is calling him
Hitler.
Right? Basically. Yeah, he's calling ICE Gestapo. He's this is his quote. He said, Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping people up off the street. Jasmine Crockett from Texas, she's a U.S. representative, compares ICE to slave patrols and thugs. And if you're not from the U.S., ICE is Immigration Customs Enforcement. Is that what the C stands for in ICE? John Larson from Connecticut is a U.S. representative. He compared ICE to the SS and the Gestapo. So if your politician, your guy, your gal, whoever it is saying these things, people are listening and they're going to take action based on the words that you say.
Right.
Because your words matter.
Yeah.
and any leader gets that. We're both pastors. We understand that I can't just get up on a pulpit and just start saying inflammatory, reckless, and careless things because I'm shooting from the hip, right? Because everything I'm saying is being carefully weighed and measured. And I just think right and left. And again, we've talked on this podcast. I think most people know me and you. I lean more conservative, but I'm definitely not a fan of the kind of rhetoric that's coming from the Trump White House at all.
Yeah,
because I think it is leading us to a very, very, very dark place. And I think that's part of the reason we're in the mess that we're in. But we voted for it, and I'd say you and I did. I'm just saying, as a nation, this is what we keep voting for on the right and the left. Because Harris was guilty of saying just as much inflammatory rhetoric. I would say, calling Trump a fascist.
Yeah.
And then we're surprised when Charlie Kirk gets gunned down in the middle of the street with people that think that they're doing a favor for the American people by taking out fascists.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I think he has drastically degraded the office of the presidency of the United States of America. And it's been coming. I mean, it's been a succession of different presidents who've also done that preceding him. So it's not just him, but I think that he is definitely accelerated that.
Sure.
Just the level of decorum that a president should have. I think if you compare it to even just 50 years ago and some of the speech and rhetoric and how a president carried himself. And I mean, we have a president right now that's flicking off reporters.
It's unheard of.
Yeah, that to me is embarrassing, and I will be the first person to call it out and say that that's not what I wanted in a president.
Nope.
Which leads me to my third thing, and this is not a comprehensive list by any stretch of imagination,
sure.
But my third thing is why America is so divided right now is a lack of clear vision and leadership. And I think if we wanted to reverse this tide and this cycle of polarization, if we had someone who became our president, our leader, who could clearly articulate vision, direction, and educate people in a very non-confrontational way, just here is why we don't want to become fill in the blanks, socialist or communist or fascist. And I think about the fireside chats. Who was that Roosevelt did?
Roosevelt.
I think about that, and I'm like, if we had a president who just sat down each evening and made a video about the history of this or the history of this person or this movement and just talked from the heart and just united Americans and like, here's what makes us Americans and here's what makes us in a very special way, unique, and why we must cherish this gift of being Americans. I think if we had that clearly projected vision and articulated leadership, we'd be way better off. But
yeah, no, I agree with you. That's why Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has to run for president in 2028.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I just read over the past year a biography of Harry Truman from David McAuliffe. I'm a huge history buff, and Truman was a Democrat. He was a New Dealer, so I think one could make the argument that he plunged America into a lot more progressive politics than I am comfortable with. I don't really like that form of government, but I was so impressed by the decorum and the discipline of his public persona and the way that he took the office so serious.
Yeah.
And the way he measured every word, he measured every decision. He was and I just read it and it was just sad because I was just like, man, I just don't feel like we've had that in a very long time.
Yeah, I remember there was one debate. I think it was in 2015. Who was it, man? Who was Trump running against in 2015? I don't even remember.
That was the primaries, the Republican primaries.
Yeah, they were basically comparing the size of their hands. by
Yeah, 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 yeah,
implication,
yeah.
by
The size of
implication,
their
the size of
manhood. Yeah,
their manhood. Yeah, and it's like,
I turned it off
seriously,
after that. I was so
this is a
disgusted by it. Yeah,
this is a complete circus,
yeah,
and this is embarrassing. Like if I go
yeah,
overseas and show someone this clip, they would think that we're just buffoons.
yeah,
Here we have
yeah,
two grown men running for office of the presidency, arguing about the size of their private parts, and it's like, man,
yeah.
it's
No,
so sad.
and I think that's when it became, um,
Evident.
yeah, yeah. It just, and one could say, I mean, like, I mean, I don't want to go too far back, but I think the Obama presidency, I think he knew how to. He was a really good politician. Whatever you want to say
Mm-hmm.
about Obama, you could say that. But I think there was a part of Obama that was less about um, actual policy making and more about just the show.
Yeah.
Like he was all about celebrities being in the White House, and he was kind of a celebrity himself, and so I don't know if that began this whole thing of being a president is more about your popular personality than it is you as a lawmaker. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's kind of what laid the groundwork for. Then Trump comes along and he's a reality TV host who comes in,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, we could do a whole other episode about that, but it just seems like since then we have been on just a really negative path
Mm-hmm.
towards our leaders and our policymakers. Just I don't think taking their jobs with the kind of seriousness and decorum.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them, but I would say a lot of them, and that just it's really disappointing. We're seeing the results of that. I think so. That was your third reason,
Yeah.
kind of lack of leadership. Okay, I think my third reason is our extreme social isolationism, and I think there are folks who live most of their lives online. Barna Group did a poll recently. The average American spends 7 hours a day on the screen.
Wow.
And so most of our lives are lived online and not in person. And here's the thing, if you live most of your life in person, you're going to have to learn to coexist and do life with people who think different than you do and who are different than you. But if you're living most of your life on a screen and you have an algorithm that's feeding you a curated experience of everything you want to see and everything you're already going to agree with, that is going to lead you to do something sociologists call othering. And othering is where we view people different from us as the enemy. We view them as evil. We view them as wicked. We view them as dangerous. We view them as the problem with our society. We don't know how to view their disagreements as just disagreements.
Mm.
And so if they disagree with us, they're part of that group, whatever group that is, that's responsible for destroying America. And I think part of the reason that that's happening is because we're more socially isolated than ever before.
Yeah.
And so we're socially isolated. We're online all the time. We're just feeding our minds and with all this stuff. And then we meet somebody in person or we come across somebody online that thinks different than we do because they're not part of the same little ecosystem that our algorithm is feeding us. We see them as other. And they're the problem. They're dangerous. They're the ones destroying. They're the fascists. They're the communists. They're whatever, right?
Yeah.
And it's like we don't know how to just go, oh, my neighbor Tom is a great guy. He votes different than I do, but he's a great guy. We like to hang out. We don't know how to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 Hmm.
So, what were we going to say?
Oh, I just got to, I was thinking about, I'm trying to decide if I want to say, because I don't know if he listens, but I had a friend from high school. He was in my wedding, and we have radically different views on politics, but, we're still friends. He's actually the only person from high school that I really keep in touch with on a regular basis, and I just check in with him on a regular basis. But a lot of it is just because we grew up together and we have a lot of shared memories and stuff. But I could see how, in this political climate, I could see how me and this close friend would really struggle if some of these topics came up, because we're both probably pretty passionate about them, but we just kind of like unspoken, we both know that we have these differences and we just it never comes up. So
Well, it used to be that common decency and manners were there were three things that you didn't bring up at a party or at a family gathering or whatever, and it was politics, religion, and money. Right? You didn't bring up politics because nobody wanted to argue about politics. You didn't bring up the church that you go to that nobody else, I'm Methodist, everybody else in my family's Baptist. Well, we're not going to bring that up, right?
Yeah.
And then we're not going to bring up money. How much money do you make? Like we're not doing that, right? It was just it was manners. You just didn't do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you always would kind of test the bridge of the relationship to see if you could have conversations about politics, if it was, but it's like now we almost come to gatherings with people, and if they have different political views than us or ideological views than us, it's like we're so guarded we can't even talk about anything else because we've seen them as other, like they belong in a different category altogether than us because they disagree about that thing. And so it's very weird, and I think it's because we all have our own personal echo chambers and ecosystems that we have built because we're living lives primarily online instead of in person. So yeah, that's not made us better, it's made us worse. We're worse at connecting with each other even though we're more digitally connected than we've ever been.
Yeah.
So this leads us to kind of this idea of there are two different visions really that we've built for what our nation should be. And we're going to look at just kind of four big questions. And I think if we look at, obviously there's way more than just two sides of this, but there's two main sides, I think, to this division. And I think for each of these, there's a different answer that's given. If you really boil it down to its common denominator, so we're going to look at four questions. The first question is this: what is America? And I know that sounds kind of strange because most people, when they hear it, will go, yeah, I don't know what America is. But like, if you get beneath the surface of what's being said, really, the question is this: is America a concrete nation or inheritance that we've inherited from those who founded it and those who fought to protect it and those who have built it? Or is America just an abstract idea? So is it our home that we inherited, again, from those who've built it and have protected it and who've kept it? Or is it just a group that you get to join irrespective of any merit on your own part based on just shared values? Is this making sense?
I think, so there's like a concrete view would be like defined by physical borders, common history, and laws, right?
Mm-hmm.
And an abstract would be that it's anybody and everybody, come one, come all kind of idea.
On the boats, on the planes, they're coming to America. That's my Neil Diamond impersonation.
I mean, it's kind of a blend, but I think with a greater
it kind of is, isn't it?
I think our founders really put a notable emphasis on the idea of the rule of law. If you just read through all the Constitution and the various articles attached to the Constitution, it's like these guys were brilliant lawmakers who had the foresight to create some things that now you got to remember, like when America was first founded, like no one's going to be coming across the ocean just to move to
the colonies.
What was the colonies? Yeah, it's like this wasn't a thing. And now it's like the United States of America has grown so prominent economically that, as you know, Ronald Reagan said, it's like we're a city on a hill. It's like so many people are like, I want a piece of that action. I want to be part of that nation because there's opportunity there, opportunity for me and my offspring to have a better life. And so I think there's this unforeseen dilemma of like, okay, then how much foresight did the founders have about what do we do with all these people who are willing to get on boats and crowd onto really small boats and travel across oceans to be a part of this? And
Right.
That's something I don't think they had the foresight, but they did lay the legal framework to deal with and give Congress
Right.
and the executive branch the legal framework and presidents
No.
to litigate.
Yeah. As I look at our history, and again, I'm a big student of history, I would say that America is kind of both, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is
Yeah.
both a nation defined by physical borders, common history, and specific laws, and it is a moral project. It's an open society for those who would come and adopt our values that are welcome to be a part of it. Like it's both, right? But the rub is if someone falls too heavily on either of those views, one would say it is a home for us, it's not a home for them, so they have to get out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other would say, well, borders, you can't have borders that are closed because, man, this is an idea. Everyone is welcome to be a part of the idea. And the truth is, like, well, somewhere in the middle, I think, is probably the answer. Yes, everyone is open to be a part of the idea as long as they are willing to abide by these specific laws that we have that would lead to us flourishing here, to be a part of this. Like that. And so I think that's probably where we're talking over each other.
Mm-hmm.
Is America is both. It is a specific nation, but it's also, it is an idea of something beautiful, and that's what that is what makes us great, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's an interesting thing to think through, because I think the question we have to ask is if it's just an idea, do we have any obligation to our own citizens over the rest of the world? Right? I think that's one question we've got to ask.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we do, but we got to be careful at the same time that we don't want to turn into nationalists or isolationists at the same time.
Sure.
I think we should be exporting good ideas and importing good ideas to the rest of the world, and be open to trade and commerce with the rest of the world. But yeah, at the same time, I think we need to have, and we do have, a system that vets people legally to immigrate to the United States of America. That system is in place. That system has been in place for a very long time. And the sad thing is that when people go around that system, and they come independent of that system illegally, they're detracting like resources from that legal system. Mm-hmm. Of immigration, where people are waiting for years to be able to move to the United States of America and to do it legally. They could just, come up through the southern border or whatever, and then just, hop a fence. But these people are decided to do it the right way. But unfortunately, it takes a really long time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think we do have a obligation to the citizens of this nation to protect it. I mean, it's foolish to say and to think for a second that there are not bad characters out there who would love and are coming to the United States of America with ill intent, really to sow chaos, to sow anarchy, to sow things that are opposed to the American idea.
Right.
Yeah, they are coming, and many would say that they're already here, that mean us ill intent.
Yeah, and I think that's you have to have a realistic anthropology. And by anthropology, I mean you have to understand the nature of humanity. If you have a very unrealistic anthropology that's detached from the reality that there are wicked people in the world, you will practice indiscriminate compassion. And indiscriminate compassion kills. So not every person who's coming to America is a monster or vermin, as we've been told. Some of them are just seeking a better life for them and their family, right? But in the same sense, not everyone who comes to America is seeking a better life for their family. Some of them are fleeing from their own country because they're wanted for murder, right? And so, like, you've got to think a little bit nuanced about this. We can't be so black and white about it, But would you say that any culture that views borders as morally problematic, can that culture sustain itself? And I think we're looking at Europe now. I think we could probably answer that question.
Well, yeah. So let's define sustain itself, I guess, because, um, yeah, I mean, there's parts of Europe, from what I understand, that are going to be locally governed by things like Sharia law,
Mhm.
due to mass immigration. And so, yeah, it seems to be sustaining itself, but it's going to be under Islamic uh, Islamic law, like religious law. But I think if you mean by sustaining itself, I would say the ideal sustaining itself is giving the people freedom to choose their religion, freedom to choose who they want to vote for, freedom to pursue opportunities in education and an occupation of their choosing, freedom to gather without fear of repercussion, freedom of speech, those kinds of things. I think that's what my definition of thriving would be, and I think what the founders' definition of thriving would be is that we all have this equal starting point of economic, religious, political success. Can we thrive without borders? If that's a definition of thriving and succeeding, 100% not, because like I said, there are people who are religious sociopaths that want nothing more than just to sow seeds of chaos and to bring destruction to that entire system so that their system can be the rule of law.
Mhm.
And I mean, if I found someone and they were like, why do you want to go to the United States of America? Oh, because I want to go there to bring down the economic system of the United States of America so that it crumbles as a nation. And that is the starting point for a religious revolution that everyone will then accept Sharia law. These are crazy ideas. I know
Right.
There are people in the world who that is their sole motivation to come to the United States of America. Not everybody, obviously, and it's a vast minority, but there are people. So automatically you have to say, okay, wait a second, you're crazy, and I don't want you in my nation because you're willing to end your own life for the sake of ending other people's lives and to bring down our safety. So right away you have to admit there needs to be some sort of vetting process here.
Right.
Yeah.
There has to be shared values if you're going to be a part of, like, if America is a moral project, right,
Mm-hmm.
and it's an abstract idea, then you can be a part of it if you share these values,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I would say that that's a really important thing for us to really think through, that America is, I would say both. It is a concrete inheritance. It's our home, and
Mm-hmm.
any home and any nation has to have laws, has to have borders, has to have a common history. But it is open for those who would want to be a part of it. They just have to be willing to abide by a set of shared values. And I think that's where we're talking over each other, because it seems like we don't know the nuance between those two. It's either one or the other. And I think that's a really important thing to really think through. And I think that's why there's kind of two different visions of reality when it comes to America. Second would be, what is justice? So what does justice actually mean? It's interesting. You hear a lot of talk in the Trump administration about the Justice Department and justice, and then you hear in a lot of social activism, justice for so and so, or we're social justice warriors, or whatever the case is. Right? Same word, it means two completely different things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So is justice ordered due process, or is justice minimizing harm? So there's the ordered view, right? Justice is giving everybody their due within the law. So you break the law, justice is coming for you, right? And order is the highest priority, because without it, the innocent can't be protected. And then there's the compassion view. Justice is defined as minimizing visible suffering. So if a law causes pain, like someone being deported or someone being sent to prison, then justice is eliminating that law because the law itself is a problem, or ignoring that law, right?
Yeah.
And so the question I always have for folks who say abolish ICE, abolish ICE, abolish ICE, and I've never been able to get a straight answer, is this: what should the consequence be for someone who chooses to break the law by entering into a nation illegally? What should the consequence be? What is it pretty much anywhere in the world? Well, usually it's arrest and deportation.
Deportation,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we abolished ICE, what would the penalty be for someone who chose to break the law to come into this country illegally? And I can't get a straight answer from folks, but anyway, so what's justice?
Yeah, I would say that it's both of those, because when you give someone who is breaking a law or a rule the justice due to them, that's compassion to all of those who are around that person.
True.
If one of my kids picks up a stick and starts running around and whacking all my other kids,
is this theoretical or is this actually happened?
Yeah, probably actually happened. Happen here in about an hour.
Yeah, same for mine.
It would be really compassionate to my other children for me, the strongest of them all, to step in and to grab the stick out of his hand and sit him in the corner or give him a whooping on his tail and say, stop beating your other siblings with a stick. I'm going to give you a piece of justice, and it's compassionate to everyone around you. Now, he doesn't have to do that. He didn't have to pick up a stick. No one's making him pick up a stick. He chose to do that, knowing that was against the rules of our home. Knowing that he was acting in rebellion to the rules of our home, he chose to do that. So he knew that, hey, if I get caught, there's going to be repercussions. And that's the same, I think, someone who chooses to come to the United States of America illegally, they're taking on this responsibility and these repercussions of saying, hey, if I get caught, there's going to be repercussions. There should be repercussions. And I think it's compassionate to everyone around, especially if we live in this kind of these shared social programs of like public school and daycare and public transit and all this other stuff, welfare programs that we all pay into. Someone comes here illegally and they're tapping into that, but they're not contributing towards it. It's compassionate to everyone to say, hey, sorry, you're here illegally. We have to take you back to where you came from because you didn't do it the right way. You're not following the laws. You're not following the process. And there are people who are waiting, who are following the process, and you're detracting from the efficiency of that system.
Well, and I would also say on the other side, the enforcement of justice can be done compassionately.
Yeah.
And one could argue that in some places right now, that's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a bigger conversation. I think that's a reasonable conversation.
Yeah.
Is the enforcement of those laws happening in an equitable and just and humane way?
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge, I mean, I think we could make that argument that in some places, no, it's not. And it needs to be, held more accountable and all that stuff. Right. But if you're prioritizing feelings and trauma over law and order, and you're saying that law causes people pain, well, okay, man, sorry, like it is painful to get arrested and go to jail, but what do you do for somebody who breaks the law? I mean, I don't know what you do with that. Is justice something that has to happen in a culture, in a society, to protect the citizens of the society?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I would say,
how many? No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'd just say that, like any reasonable person, if you actually stop and think about it, you have to have laws. You have to have the enforcement of laws for there to be true justice. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you actually also have to have like humane and compassionate enforcement of those laws that respects human rights in order for there to be justice as well. And so I think that's what's getting missed.
Yeah.
What were we going to say?
Oh, just, justice when carried out properly is always compassionate.
Yeah, true.
When we, see in the news like these horrific mass shooting events, people pick up, when these are going on, what is the first thing that happens? People pick up the phone and they dial 911. Why? Not because they're just hoping only the ambulances come when this active shooter is still running around the mall or whatever thing. The ambulances need to come, but what needs to happen before the ambulance comes, before those people can be hauled off that are injured? What needs to happen is someone who is more well-armed and trained and equipped shows up and executes justice there on the spot and makes it safer for those people there, so that those people can be treated. That's a compassionate. Now, I'm not, obviously, guys, I'm not saying that illegals need to be dealt with that way. Illegal immigrants need to be dealt with that way. It's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, like, justice is always compassionate, and that's an expression of compassion to those around who are being slaughtered.
Right.
Now, there are people who came here and willingly decided, hey, I'm going to come here illegally and take advantage of the systems that are in place that, other people have to pay for. And that's incompassionate to the people who are having to pay for those things.
Yeah. And so is justice just turning a blind eye towards people who are skirting our existing laws? Is that what justice is? Because we want to be compassionate? Like, I don't think so. I think compassion truly has to be discriminate.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, I think sometimes we intertwine like our faith into this, and we say, well, we have to be, hospitable to the foreigner and the sojourner and those who are amongst us who are poor or whatever. And that's, yeah, definitely, like, we should show compassion and show hospitality, but at the same time, like, I think we have to balance that with the fact that Paul told someone who was an escaped slave to go back to your slave owner. This is something that, like, we have to be people who, hey, when we're living in a system governed by a set of laws, we have to follow those laws insofar as they don't violate our faith.
Yeah.
And I'm not just speaking off the cuff here. Like, I am close friends, I would say, with an illegal immigrant who I see on a regular basis, and he has a family, and he has put his family and his children under great risk of being here. And I disagree. I agree with his motivations. I don't know that I would do anything different if I was in a situation, but I disagree. He is living in constant paranoia, especially with ICE raids amped up and everything. He's living in constant paranoia and fear that this is going to happen. But I'll tell him straight up, like, hey, you need to do whatever it takes to become a legal citizen. You need to get this squared away, or you need to go back where you came from and do it the right way so that you can live here peacefully and have, like, a great sense of relief, not worrying about who's going to be knocking on your door next.
Yeah.
And he's a very strong believer.
Yeah.
But,
well, and I think that's an important distinction. You brought up Philemon, where Paul says to Onesimus, he writes to the, owner. This is when in the Roman Empire, slavery is a thing. It's really interesting. Paul is saying to the owner of Onesimus, hey, I'm sending him back to you, but now he's your brother because you're both Christians now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in one sense, Christianity kind of cuts through and erases that whole, we're all equal in Christ. There is no slave, there's no free, there's no male, there's no female, there's no black, no white, no Jew, no Gentile, right? We're all one in Christ. But in another sense, Paul is kind of saying in that sense, like, but hey, listen, there's, and this is a giant conversation that we could, gosh, I'd love to do an episode on this. Does the Bible condone slavery? It does not condone slavery. But within the Roman Empire, within that framework, there was something that was to be said about the structure of that whole system, that in that context, Paul does not have it in that moment, really the authority to upend.
Right.
But the biblical ethic kind of upends it by default, in the sense that he's being sent back, not as a slave, but as a brother, right?
Yeah.
So in speaking about your friend,
Mm-hmm.
that's your brother in Christ.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. So that there is a structure in place that you'd say to him, hey, listen, man, gosh, there's a structure, there's a system in place right now. And
yeah,
I'm afraid for your freedom because, this, but I'm not going to treat you as less than or as,
no,
vermin or whatever, an animal. You're not. You're a brother in Christ. I think there's that compassionate biblical view of, yes, have mercy on the sojourner and the immigrant and all that. Yes,
yeah,
gosh, of course. Love them, care for them, be there for them, right? But at the same
yeah,
time, that doesn't mean we just have to throw out any understanding of borders and
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've had him in my home numerous times. Fed him. Like I have really good conversations with him, but I have said to him, like, if you decide to do this the right way, I'm there for you. I'll vouch for
sure.
you.
For sure.
I'm willing to be a support to you if you want to do this the right way.
Yeah.
But I'm not in a place, I don't think, where I need to, like, obviously, like, turn him in or anything like that.
No, of course. Yeah.
I don't want to divide up his family, but at the same time, I am constantly telling him, like, hey, there are laws, and if you want to get out from under this fear and this paranoia, I'm willing to help you go about it the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think kind of that's leading into really the next question is, what is Christianity? Because if you're listening to this, you're not a Christian or you're not American. Right, wrong, or indifferent, the dominant religious ideology of our nation is Christianity, right? But when we say Christian, or that's not very Christian, or my Christian faith informs my beliefs and understanding of this, okay, what do we mean by that? And I think there's two different visions for what we mean by my Christianity informs my beliefs about these cultural issues. And so the question is Christianity whole Bible orthodoxy? Meaning, is it a gospel to obey? Is it God's laws and commands to submit to? Is it a faith that actually does teach a God who holds people accountable and who judges the unrighteous? Or is it Jesus as just basically modern compassion ethics? It's the Jesus of affirmation. It's the Jesus of inclusion. And so I think even within the church, there are two different visions of Christianity that use the exact same vocabulary. There's, again, the view that says Scripture is an authority. There's the demanding of repentance. There's sin. There's Christ as Lord. Christ as King. And then there's, I'm a red letter Christian, and Jesus was all about compassion and affirmation and inclusion. But at the same time, there is a stripping away of moral demands and judgment when we adopt kind of that latter view other than the former view. And so how you view your Christian faith is going to heavily influence how you view these cultural moments, because, again, a Jesus that is primarily about compassion ethics is not going to be a Jesus that makes any moral demands of anybody. What do you think about this?
Yeah. I think we just like progressive Christians would say, I don't like how you're marrying your faith with conservatism or republicanism or whatever.
That's an ironic statement, isn't it?
Yeah. It's
just progressive Christianity is in lockstep with democratic lawmakers. I just think that's hilarious.
Yeah, and agendas, and some even in Marxist ones. And I'd say we all have to look at ourselves, first of all, as citizens of a higher, greater kingdom. And anytime we label ourselves as, Republican first, Democratic first, or socialist first, and then, and by the way, we are Christians, we're disciples of Christ, I think we run into some serious problems. We have to filter everything through that identity of being disciples of Christ, and that label is primary in our life. But there are his teachings are absolutely transformative. And there are massive um, moral obligations placed on us to turn from sin and towards righteousness, to be obedient to God's word, to redefine these key ideas of law and justice and compassion according to how the Bible defines them. And that's what he's called us to. And there are so many voices, so much information vying for our attention and vying to redefine those terms according to their worldview. And we have to be careful as believers to not be swept up in those in either direction, either camp. But at the same time, I think we need to value and cherish the fact that we're in a nation that, for the most part, really honors people's various religions and faiths. And while I don't think America is the promised land, I don't think it's like the New Jerusalem or anything like that. I don't believe it's the kingdom of God. I do believe it is a vehicle on which one can dwell and experience a lot of freedom and goodness and economic and human flourishing, so long as it is done without exploitation of other people.
Yeah,
and I think we have to protect that, and be in supportive of people who are also protecting that.
Sure. Yeah, I think we've said this before on this podcast many times, and I think this is your line, Gabe, where you've said anytime we put a qualifier before Christian, we've missed the boat. If we say we're a
great noun but a horrible adjective, is that
right? So if you say you're a conservative Christian, no, you're a Christian. You're a Christian. I'm a progressive Christian. No, you're a Christian, right? And I think that. I think Tim Keller said it this way, and I think this is a very interesting thing to think through. If you are truly embracing the gospel as it is presented to us through the scriptures, there's going to be times when you sound like a conservative, and there's going to be times when you might sound like a progressive. That it's going to be an equal opportunity offender.
Yeah.
That when the gospel preaches repentance and submission to Christ as King, there's going to be people that call you a fire-breathing conservative. And when the gospel teaches us to love the least of these, to clothe the naked, to feed the hungry, to, turn the other cheek when somebody strikes us, right? There's going to be people that say, well, that sounds like, woke theology, right? Okay, it's just gospel, man. It's just the teachings of Jesus, right?
Right. Yeah.
And we can't let our faith get hijacked by whatever political movement we're aligning ourselves with. I also think it's very important that Jesus without moral demands is not the Jesus of the Bible. And we got to understand that. Jesus that is whatever I want him to be. So I think it's interesting. That guy, Rhett and Link, you're big fans of him. What's his name? I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
His full name.
Rhett McLaughlin.
Whatever. Yeah. So he deconstructed years ago. He says he's not a Christian, right? But I saw a YouTube video of him, and he's reading the Bible, and he's basically like preaching at conservatives, telling them they're not Christian as he's reading the Bible. And I'm like, dude, you've rejected the divinity of Jesus. You would say you're not a Christian. You've rejected the Christian belief system, and yet you're taking the Christian ethic and preaching the Christian ethic back at Christians when you've rejected. So something's wrong with this picture. Like that's not, like, Christianity is both doctrine to believe and ethics to live out. It's not one or the other. You can't split the two. One side says as long as you believe certain things, it doesn't matter how you live, and one side says you don't have to believe anything about it as long as you live according to certain things. And I'd say no, it's both. You got to believe Jesus is fully God, Jesus is fully man, he is Lord. You submit your life to him, you put your faith in him, but then as you do, he shapes you and you live according to a certain set of ethics. But it's not a lifestyle of affirmation and inclusion that has no moral demands or judgment. And so I think it's we're living in very confused times when it comes to that.
Well, and yeah, and then mix in the fact that there are entities and organizations who are paying gobs and gobs of money to promote agendas and influence people to adopt agendas. There's you have to be careful. You have to be discerning of like what stance am I taking on this, and am I being inappropriately influenced by someone who has ulterior motives and does not share my worldview.
Yeah.
I think anytime there's never been in the United States of America, probably I think it's safe to say, a political party or movement that is fully overlapped and been like hand in glove with the Christian faith. There just hasn't, and I don't think there ever will be. We're going to always have to take, to some extent, this like a la carte kind of approach to politics and policy within the United States of America of like, I like what they're doing here, I dislike what they're doing there, and piece together a cohesive direction for how you're going to vote, how you're going to discuss these things. But unfortunately, and bringing this back to like the polemic, polarized culture of the United States right now, it's like you're either all in for this party and everything they do and adopt and say, or you're all in for that party and everything they do and adopt and say.
And then using your faith as a reason for why. And so your faith looks indistinguishable from whatever party you're aligning yourself with.
Right.
That it is most Christian to vote for Kamala Harris, or it is most Christian to vote for Donald Trump. And it's like, ugh.
Yeah, yeah.
Golly, man. Like, when did it become that we marry our faith and put it in lockstep with a political party? Like, that is bad news bears on either end of the spectrum, either left or right. And it's so funny that there's so many people on the left accusing Christians on the right of doing it when they're doing it just as bad.
Yeah. This day and age, I'm convinced, Josh, if you don't throw up a little bit in your mouth as you're voting for the president, that A, you either don't know the policies of that human being well enough, or B, you don't know your Bible well enough.
You don't know your faith. Yeah, you don't know your faith. Yeah. Yeah, last question, I think, and this is a big one. What does loving my neighbor look like? In other words, like, what's the wisest way to do it? Like, if Christianity is the dominant religious ideology in our nation, and it is, and we are to love our neighbor, okay, what's the best and the wisest way to do it? How do we build a society of flourishing and safety for those under our care?
Wow.
So are we to love our particular neighbor, our countrymen, the people closest to us, the people in our communities, the people in our towns, and we're to do whatever we can to help build a society, help build a community that leads to human flourishing? Or are we to show indiscriminate compassion to the abstract human? No matter any concerns we have of safety or societal frameworks, I'm supposed to love my neighbors. That means my neighbor could be a murderer in the country they're fleeing, but who am I to judge? I got to love my neighbor.
Right. That's like, the guy standing at the intersection of the red light, asking for money. It's like, let's say, for a fact that this man has struggled with alcoholism.
Right.
And if you give him $10, he will go right across the street to the liquor store and spend all of that on and so you're perpetuating an addiction and self-harm, and potentially harming other people because of his behavior. So I think right there we have this like dilemma of like, what is loving them as yourself? Because the unloving thing to do would be to give that man money so that he can go and indulge himself in what he's addicted to. And it's automatically, it's way more complex than just, give them what they want. Right. I think that's what a lot of Christians, very shallow, biblically illiterate Christians, say is like, it's really loving and compassionate. Let's just give them what they want.
Right.
But that's a very limited view. It's like when you're raising children, and if you try to raise children that way, it's going to end horribly for you. Just give them what they want.
Yeah, that's the most loving thing to do to your kids. Whatever they're asking for, give it to them. Yeah.
Right. Sometimes a very loving thing to do is to withhold something from someone because they're overindulging in that thing, or you know that they are doing self-harm with that substance. So I would say in some cases it's not just black and white. Sometimes it's like, man, we got to really sort through this to figure out what is the loving thing to do in this situation.
Right.
But it's never just, let's just give them what they want.
Yeah.
It's rarely that.
I think too, you have to start asking the question, if I practice indiscriminate compassion to everybody, well, then specific duties that I have to those closest to me get lost, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm just saying, hey man, come in and anything you want, anything you're asking for, anything, yes, yeah, okay, well then that's taking away from the people closest to me that actually do need that too,
mm-hmm.
right? And so there's this idea of, if someone doesn't show indiscriminate compassion, they're not loving their neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that's a false that's a false presumption, right?
Yeah.
There are people, I would say, on the right and on the conservative side of it, that aren't interested in compassion. They're not interested in loving their neighbor. They are nationalist and they're racist.
Mm-hmm.
There are some. I'm not gonna say that doesn't exist. Of course that exists, right?
Yeah.
But there are some compassionate conservatives that would say, no, the reason that we're wanting to practice some sort of discrimination, in the sense of not discriminating by race or discriminating by religion, but discriminating by, if someone is here illegally or if someone is a bad actor, we're going to limit the amount of resources or things that we may give them, because we're trying to practice compassion and love towards other people who actually need them, who are here first, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't make somebody unloving. That doesn't make them a bad neighbor or unchristian. It just means they're trying to practice, in one sense, wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's where things get lost. Yeah.
Peter's writing to Christians in the first century, and he says in 1 Peter 2, I urge you as sojourners and exiles. And what do you mean by that is, like, don't look at yourself as permanent citizens and permanent inhabitants wherever you are. But at the same time, do not disengage. You have to care about laws and justice here, vote
mm-hmm. and
work here, but don't confuse where the here is with the kingdom of God that is yet to come and be realized. So on the one side, you have to avoid, like you were saying, the one end of the spectrum, which is nationalism, Christian nationalism, which always, for some reason, has this racist bent to it as well.
It's always anti-Semitic too.
Yeah. We have to avoid that. But at this other end of the spectrum, which we want to avoid, is political withdrawal and mm-hmm. promoting anarchy, even inadvertently promoting anarchy. But so we want to avoid those ends, and I think we need to find ourselves in the middle as Christians living in the United States of America in 2026, of being politically engaged, politically informed, but also not the opposite ends of the spectrum. But I think another thing we got to think about with all this too is that a lot of these people, and this is just a proven fact, a lot of these people coming to our nation illegally are being used by politicians as pawns, as power sources, mm-hmm. and for some people it's coming to light, especially in Minneapolis, money laundering. Mm-hmm. We're seeing deep corruption and lots of money being moved around through illegal immigrants. And it's a very uncompassionate thing to use a entire demographic of people just to keep yourself in power and get votes. Yeah. That's extremely, extremely messed up. But that is happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I think at the end of it all, man, we got to start asking better questions, and we got to start being willing to have conversations, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think if you put your phone down and you turn off CNN or you turn off Fox News and you get with somebody who is reasonable and who may view it different than you might find that actually, like, they want the same thing that you do. They're just, mm-hmm. they may disagree with you on the outcome, of how that comes about, right? So not every person who leans left is a like Antifa rioter that wants to burn down a city.
Right.
And not every person who leans right is a, incredibly racist Christian nationalist who, has a Donald Trump shrine in their house. Like what we're missing is, I think both sides are judging each other and sizing each other up on their lunatic fringe.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're missing is there's a lot more people that are just reasonable everyday Americans that are just trying to figure out in this moment that we're living in, man, what is the best path forward? Like, how can we do this together? Right.
Yeah.
And scratching their heads when they see how absolutely polarized we are. And I would just say, man, the path forward is probably to have a lot more conversation and to ask better questions.
Mm-hmm.
And my hope and my prayer is that we hopefully started asking some of them today to kind of get the ball rolling and maybe some wheels turning in some people's minds. So I hope. I don't know if we did that successfully or not, but well, Gabe, this is a long episode.
Yeah.
We're an hour and 10 and still rolling. So what you got going on today?
Wow. That's a good question. I think I have a home inspection report coming in today, so I need to get that.
Nice.
Start addressing some things on the house and making sure it's squared away. Yeah.
You guys have any ice or snow down there?
We had a little bit of snow a few days ago. It was awesome, about 2 inches.
Wow.
Yeah. It's the second year in a row we've had snow, which is just absolutely bonkers.
It doesn't happen in lower Alabama most of the time.
No. It was awesome.
Yeah. We got tons of ice and snow, so roads are starting to clear off today, but not a ton. So, yeah. All right, friends. Well, thank you for listening. If you have any comments, suggestions, or thoughts, send us an email, beardsandbiblepodcast@gmail.com, or you can leave us a comment on YouTube or Facebook, and we would love to hear your thoughts. So thanks for listening. We will see you guys next time.